You're listening to the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown.
When it really counted and you needed to save your life, what did that stuff matter? They left it. It's going on somebody else's fireplace now. It's not going to stay in Nineveh. The decision of the armies surrounding and in Nineveh was simple. Take everything, including anything that's nailed down. Take that too. And they did it. The city was left open to ransack, and everything got left behind.
Next time you have a few moments at home, why don't you go room to room and make a mental inventory of what you have? How much of it have you used in the last year, last 3 years? Are there things you've never used? It can be easy to collect and hoard, only to complain about the lack of storage space. Do you really need that extra climate-controlled storage room down the street? Today, Pastor Ken challenges you to consider storing up treasures in heaven rather than a bunch of junk here on earth. Well, let's join Pastor Ken in the book of Nahum, chapter 2, as he continues his message, The Fall of Nineveh.
Now, Nineveh is not winning, and Nineveh is losing. And what happens? The Bible tells us right here that the might of Assyria runs like a bunch of scared children. As fast as they possibly can, they go running away, and the same's going to be done to them. They know what they did to enemy soldiers. They know what they did to those people they captured, and they know that's going to happen to them. They don't want that so they run like there's no tomorrow. Multiple speed records for running were probably set that day as they were heading out of the city. The walls were not supposed to go down. They were designed to stand. But when you have 2 miles of the wall go down, that's kind of like the Lord saying, here you go, come in right here. This is where I want you to come in. By the way, the palace is there, the storehouse is here. Come on in. So they did. A pool implies a quiet, steady, consistent environment. It's not the case. Not anymore. All the best laid plans down the drain. And the heroes dedicated to the defense of Nineveh are running away as fast as they possibly can. They disappear. At the time of the greatest need, they're gone. Just like artificial ponds and moats, when they're dried up, there's just nothing there. So, the city's open to an invader. The defenders run. Now, who's calling them to stop? I don't know. It could be the Babylonians. Hey, come back, guys. We're not done with you yet. But as the army turns tail and runs, you can hear this call for them to stop. It's not just the military that's running away for their lives. It's the people of Nineveh. They're all headed for the hills, except there aren't any hills. They're like water flowing out of a tank. They're running rapidly from the city. And they're running in panic. And somebody would say, stop. No, they're not stopping. They're not turning back. They're leaving with whatever they have. And most of it is what they have on their back. We don't know who shouted stop. We don't know. It could be city leaders. It could be army officers. It could be the enemy. We don't know. But the rout is total. Justice has prevailed. God has meant what he said, and Nineveh is done. And those who made themselves wealthy by running a protection racket throughout the Middle East, and we saw the map, it goes all the way from Egypt to Iran, now they're being subjected to the same thing they did to everybody else. They're going to be impoverished, and they're in terror. Nahum tells us that as they ran, they left everything behind. And the attackers who wanted them to stop suddenly realized, wait a minute, do I want to capture this guy, or do I want the 20 pounds of gold that he just left in the house? I want the 20 pounds of gold he just left in the house. They stopped chasing the people because it's time to take plunder. That's how they got paid. So verse 9 tells us what's going on. As they go running off, they go, ooh, look at the goodies. So it's plunder the silver, plunder the gold, How much is there? The Lord tells us there is no end to the treasure. Wealth from every kind of desirable object. There are stories that the wealth that was found in Nineveh is what powered the Babylonian Empire and the Persian Empire, because there was a lot of gold there. The Assyrian Empire was known for demanding resources in exchange for, okay, you give me this, I won't attack you. Now that's a protection racket, okay? That's what it is. They just had 180,000 troops to support it. You give me all your dough, I'll let you live for another year. Now, sometimes the promises were false, and they decided, yeah, we want everything else too. We want the rest of the booty, and we want you. Now, just look at what King Hezekiah did, okay? King Hezekiah, we've already talked about him once. He rebelled against the Assyrian vassalage that his father had said, oh yeah, come and protect us. The Lord was with him, and he rebelled against the king of Assyria and refused to submit him. That's in 2 Kings 18:7. So he did that in year 3 of his rule. It took 11 years for the Assyrians to finally catch up to that. 11 years later, they show up with an army. They capture most of Judah, and they show up at his gate, coming from Lachish, which is just down the road. They're in the process of taking that down. And they're trying, and King Hezekiah is trying to figure out, how do I keep him from coming to Jerusalem? So he sends this message to the king of Assyria, who's at Lachish at this point, 2 Kings 18. He says, I violated our treaty. Now, he didn't pray about this. That's one of the things. He didn't pray about any of this ahead of time. And if you recall, what we studied in Isaiah is that he was cutting all these military alliance deals without even praying about it. And the Lord said, you think it's top secret. Here's where you're meeting. Here's what's going on. This is what's happening. God spilled the beans on everybody. So he says, I violated our treaty. If you leave, I'll do whatever you demand. So the king of Assyria demands that the king Hezekiah of Judah pay 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver in the Lord's temple and all the treasuries of the royal palace. So if they, all the silver, here you go. He also stripped the gold metal overlays from the doors of the Lord's temple and from the posts that he had previously plated them with, and gave them to the king of Assyria too. So he's pretty much stripped the city pretty bare of the riches. Now, up to this point, even though, remember, King Hezekiah is a godly king, he's a good king, but he never prayed up to this point to say, Lord, what do I need to do geopolitically to deal with this enemy? He never did. Until now. He didn't inquire about the Lord about any foreign entanglements either, and he's about to start praying about this stuff. Isn't it interesting how the Lord does that to us? He puts us in a corner where there's nothing else that we can do. Only the Lord can get us out of it, and all of a sudden we decide, maybe I should have prayed about that to begin with. Well, that's kind of where Hezekiah is. Yeah, maybe I should have prayed about this to begin with. So the king made his payment to the Assyrian protection racket. And he found out, they're racketeers. They're not very trustworthy. So he gets this message delivered with an army behind it. The king of Assyria sent his commanding general, the chief eunuch, and the chief advisor from Lachish. So they're still fighting down at Lachish, just a few miles to the south. To King Hezekiah in Jerusalem, along with a large army. And they arrive at Jerusalem, and they went and stood at the conduit of the upper pool, which is located on the road to the field where they wash and dry cloth. And they summoned the king. Now, why would you summon the king? Well, it's a protection racket, They own him. They think they own him. They say, you need to come and talk to us. Well, he sends Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace supervisor, and he sends Shebna, a scribe, and Joah, the son of Asaph, a secretary, to go meet with him. And at the end of the day, the bottom line that they say is, we want everything else, including the people. We want it all. This is not enough anymore. We want everything. So in the process of this, we saw where the Assyrian commander kind of made a challenge to the Lord that the Lord later takes advantage of. He made himself rather odious to the God of the universe, and 185,000 of them never got home as well. But the protection racket that the Assyrian military was running, it paid pretty good. And they had gotten used to the benefit of all of this cash coming in. And now it's being used on them. All the stuff that they had taken, all the things that they had, when it really counted and you needed to save your life, what did that stuff matter? They left it. It's going on somebody else's fireplace now. It's not going to stay in Nineveh. The decision of the armies surrounding and in Nineveh was simple. Take everything, including anything that's nailed down. Take that too. And they did it. The city was left open to ransack, and everything got left behind. The Assyrians had amassed an enormous amount of wealth. They had plundered everybody. There was no end to the amount of money they had. So now we get the call, plunder the silver, plunder the gold, and they're doing to Assyria what Assyria had done to everyone else. They're taking all their money. Now the question is, how much money, how much wealth is in Assyria? How much is in Nineveh? Again, the last part of verse 9, there is no end to the treasure, wealth from every kind of desirable object. Now, the word translated object is the Hebrew word clay. Clay means vessel, receptacle, piece of equipment, implement, instrument, ornament, garment, weapon, ship, or boat. How much gold and silver do they have? Boatloads. Lots. And he uses the term for boat. So, it's boatloads of gold, boatloads of silver. They got a lot of stuff. More than anybody could carry, more than anyone could imagine. So they're not chasing folks down as they run away. They're taking the money. They're taking the gold. It's a serious payday for everybody fighting. That's how they got paid. So Nahum verse 10 of chapter 2 says, she is emptied. Oh yeah, everything got taken. Yes, she's desolate and waste. By the way, they left all of the tablets and all the writings and the receipts for the beer. And we have found receipts for beer there. They left all that. They took the money, though. She's empty, she's desolate and waste. Hearts are melting, knees wobbling. Also, trembling is in the entire body. That's a nice way of saying they lost control of their bowels. And all their faces have become pale. Nahum wants us to understand the condition of Nineveh once the attack is finished. It not only speaks to the devastation that's left behind, but to the looting and the plundering that's going on. In the New American Standard Translation, we see the words emptied, desolate, and waste. Now, the first three words in Hebrew are similar. They sound the same, and it's a word play. He's trying to say something that implies its total desolation, and the words, if you say them rapidly, actually almost sound like people going through stuff. But Nineveh's desolate. And those who remain behind, they're now experiencing what Nineveh has done to other people. Terror is everywhere. They've made generations of people outside of Nineveh terror and experience terror and be terrorized and even be willing to commit suicide rather than being taken. And now they're getting that. Nahum has watched all this happen. He's reporting about it. The most shocking thing that he's seen is the Assyrian military turning tail and running away. It's what the surrounding nations did when Assyria attacked. And now the Assyrians are being treated the same way. Now again, this was the urban and money center of the Middle East. Look at the palace, okay? They've excavated the palace. In fact, they're still excavating the palace. The Southwest Palace, which was built by Sennacherib, and it took him from 703 to 691 to do it, was about 1,635 feet by 785 feet, 22 football fields. That's the palace. And they're still discovering stuff. They actually found a basement after ISIS left. They found more stuff. It was huge. They've been excavating that palace since 1850. And they still haven't finished. It's huge. The walls have actually been rebuilt. These are not small walls. These were huge. They were absolutely huge. Verse 10, she's emptied, Yes, she's desolate and waste. Hearts are melting, knees wobbling. Also tremblings in the entire body, and all their faces have become pale. Everything is now taken. Nineveh is empty and desolate. Is anyone left in town as the plundering begins? Well, if you are, you're in total terror and total fear, because they know what happened to the conquered peoples around them, and now they know they're hated, and that's going to happen to them. They know it. Nahum's intent is to reinforce the doom and gloom felt by those who are there. He wants them to understand this is really real to these folks. It's really gloom and doom. It's going to happen to them. The Hebrew literally means emptiness, and devastation. And it's just the sound and the number of syllables, it's like it gets worse and worse. This is gloomy, but it's gloomier and gloomy-esque kind of a thing. That's what he's trying to get at. Now, I remember back in verse 2 of chapter 1 where we read 3 times the Lord said he was going to have vengeance on Nineveh. Well, now in verse 10, we have 3 times destruction, destruction, destruction. He said, I'm going to do this. Now he's done it. And he mentions it 3 times. The fear, though, they're terrified. I mean, they're terrified. Abject horror. And it makes me wonder, what is it going to be like for those left behind when the rapture occurs? Is it going to be just like that? Abject terror and horror? What's next? What's happening now? What is it going to be like? I don't know. But what we see here is this is the impact on those left behind by God's judgment. And the rapture is only the beginning of all of this. So verse 11 of chapter 2. Where's the den of the lions and the feeding place of the young lions? Now, Assyria considered themselves lion-like. That was one of their symbols, was the lion. And the feeding place of the young lions. Where the lion, lioness, and lion cubs went, with nothing to disturb them. The lion tore enough for his cubs, killed enough prey for his lioness, and filled his lairs with prey and his dens with torn flesh. Nahum sees it this way. Nineveh's done. They have taken their space at the front of Ezekiel's line of dishonor. The den of lions is gone. And they're now cowering in fear or running away. Now, how bad were the Assyrians really? I mean, when you read this about lions and all that, this is an example of just one guy, Tiglath-Pileser. The first. There were several. He boasted that he fought and conquered 60 kings in one of their documents. In the beginning of his reign, he was in combat with 5 kings, and he brags that he made the blood of the warriors flow in the valleys and on the high places of the mountains. And he cut off the heads of his enemies and piled them outside their cities like heaps of grain. Nice people. Nice folks. The days of that happening, with them tearing through the nations and them doing that, taking what they wanted, destroying what they wanted, it's over with. No more slaves being taken, no more servants being taken. In fact, it's desolate and waste. And we talked about how that happened very quickly in Nineveh. Those days, using the lion as a picture, they're gone. The storerooms of gold and silver, gone. The stores of food, gone. The city and the palace in ruin and plundered. The lion, again, was one of the national emblems of the Assyrian Empire. And Nahum asks, where's the dwelling of the lions now? God has brought them low, who once were very, very mighty. So we come to verse 13. Behold, I am against you, declares the Lord of armies. I will burn up your chariots in smoke, and a sword will devour your young lions. I will eliminate your prey from the land, and no longer will the voice of your messengers be heard. Isn't it neat that as believers in Jesus Christ, we can be comforted by the fact that God's for us, and He loves us, and He'll do anything He'll do anything for us. And He does. He sent Jesus to the cross just to make sure that we could be with Him for eternity. Well, but He announces to the people of Nineveh, He's against them. That's not a good thing. I don't want to live in Nineveh if that happens. Now, they relied on their chariots. Most kings in that day and age did. Or we would call it today armor, tanks, the same kind of thing. In fact, the Israelis call one of their tanks the Merkava, which is Hebrew for chariot. But God says he's going to burn them all up. The weapons that they relied on for combat, those that gave them the edge, are fuel to be burned. They're going to be destroyed. God has no place for them. What about the young men serving in their military? The Lord says he's going to kill them all. They will no longer be able to hunt the nations around them, taking prey from them, because they have become prey. They're no longer going to be doing this. They're now in line, being given shovels, in Sheol, being told, dig deeper. To make Nineveh's extinction complete, Nahum declares the voices of their messengers will no longer be heard. So the folks that they were sending out all through their empire saying, send more dough, send more gold, send more silver, send the food, all of that, send us slaves. They're not going to be doing that anymore. There are no more messengers going out. There are no more messages to command, compel submission, extort tribute, or anything else. It's over with. It's not going to happen anymore. And have you ever felt like the culture's against us as believers? Judah felt like that when it came to Assyria. They felt like everything, when it came to Assyria, they felt that everything was against them. They either had to pay what the folks in Nineveh demanded, or they'd be invaded, some would be killed, the rest would be resettled a long way away. This was the ultimate protection racket. This is what they did. And they were held captive by those who demanded things from them. Even though they're 1,000 miles away, they'd send a messenger saying, send gold. If they don't send gold, they send the army. That's how it went. Ever notice that when the world deals with us as believers, they demand things? They don't ask nicely. They just say, you have to wear a mask or you can't have church. They demand it. They demand and issue threats of extinction. If you don't do this, you're gone. With what we see going on in the culture today as believers, there's three ways we can respond. We can either assimilate and become part of the secular culture. That's not acceptable. We can't do that. We can isolate ourselves and create Christian ghettos. That's not really acceptable either, because the Bible tells us we're supposed to be making disciples. That means we have to engage the secular culture. And that's what we're called to do. We're supposed to be salt and light. And in light of the gospel, that's the only choice that we have. We have to remember what Paul said. I love it. It's in Romans chapter 1. I am not ashamed of the good news about Christ. It's the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile. This good news tells us as God makes us right in his sight, and it's accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the scriptures say, it's through faith that a righteous person has life. And that's where we are with the folks in Judah. They didn't trust, but God took care of them. He made sure that Assyria was no longer going to be a problem. Their cultural problem was resolved, and the Lord is in the process of resolving ours as well. Probably going to take us home before we see the final results of it, but I'm looking forward to seeing some of it from the mezzanine. I don't know about you.
Thanks for tuning into today's edition of the UnSafe Bible with Pastor Ken Brown. Pastor Ken has been teaching us about the book of Nahum. Now, Nahum tells us about the coming fall of Assyria, a nation that oppressed its neighbors and brought violence and destruction on those who got in their way. Now, if you look at the world today, you'll see plenty of world powers exploiting smaller nations and subjecting people to slavery and oppression. What the Lord warns in the book of Nahum is that justice will come around one day, and even the mightiest of the nations of man will come crashing down like a sandcastle at high tide. God will not let brutality and oppression go on forever, because He is a God who cares for the broken and the weak. Well, if you've liked what you've heard from today's message, we'd love to invite you to visit us online at the unsafebible.com. While you're there, click on the Connect tab so that we can get to know you better. If you happen to find yourself in Hobe Sound, Florida, you can also join us in person for a service at Calvary Chapel, Martin County. You'll find information about our services on our website. You can also find a list of past messages from Pastor Ken so that you can catch up on any broadcasts you may have missed. Well, these shorter books of Scripture are just as important to us today as they were to their original audience thousands of years ago. We hope you'll join us again as Pastor Ken keeps bringing God's Word to life for us, and we continue to travel through this book we call the UnSafe Bible.